female entrepreneurs turned besties share on life, business, and the journey through the mess. Join their community with every new episode for connection, education, a few laughs, and the hype energy like a bathroom full of drunk girls at a bar. It's okay.
We're your friends now!
Hey everybody, it's Biz.
Hey, it's Katie.
And hey there, it is Ashleigh, and welcome to this week's episode of We're Your Friends Now. This week, we're diving into kind of a weird, nebulous topic, as we tend to do. And basically, the theme of this week is what parts of us should we be willing to change? We talk a lot about growth on this podcast, and like some of us are still in the midst of growth in our business, and a lot of us are in the midst of personal life growth. And I love a good self-help book and self-improvement book as much as the next person. And I saw a video that just like really made me think, not, hey, I really agree with this, but just, gave me some serious pause to think. So we're going to talk about a couple things today around this idea of growth and changing parts of yourself through that growth. So I know, Biz, you especially have talked a lot and been very vulnerable on this podcast about growth, especially in your business, and some of the things you've had to grow through in order to like learn how to offload things to other people and so many different aspects of your business. What's your decision process? How do you decide that you need to experience growth around something?
Well, so this is a very timely conversation, as they always are, because I'm transitioning this now because it's something that I've became aware of through therapy, what my habits were around it first. So then I can now kind of change my habits and be in control of those. But it started in the beginning just because somebody that I looked up to told me it was a good idea. And honestly, it's like, okay. And I would just look at him and be like, well, I'm no different than you. I'm just like, 15 years younger. Fucking hold my beer. Watch me, like, tell me how you did that, and that's where like, I'm always like, what are the actionable items? And I really have always nailed people down to that. I want the how-to guide on how to do there so I can rip off and duplicate. So that's how I used to decide. And honestly, Katie, I could attribute the needing to get clear on what you want. And then also, like, really, Ashleigh, like, I had this recent experience where someone told me essentially I was too much. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time that I had gotten that critique in that setting. And it was hard to take it. And I just remember coming immediately to you and y'all, like even together, and being like, hey, like this just happened. I don't know how I feel about this. And y'all were really the ones that were like, check the source. Mm. And I appreciate you being those people in my life, because honestly, it was one of the first times that I've ever had somebody tell me to check the source in that regard, that maybe I did know better.
What a concept.
So that's what I'm saying. That's really what it is. Maybe I did know better. Like that truly is like where that's the season of life right now that I'm in. Maybe I know what I'm doing. Yeah. So does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
totally. And cool. What about you, Katie, though? How do you decide, hey, there's something that needs some growth to happen?
First of all, I'm devastated that this is not just a conversation about how we've all done the growth and we're there and we're perfect now. Devastation. So probably a couple different ways. We all know I journal a lot. And I also, like you said, Biz, I get really clear on like who I am and what I want. And so when something seems out of sync or out of line, or like I have an interaction that doesn't go super well, or I'm not feeling really fulfilled, I usually turn it like introspective, and I'm like, okay, what about me is holding me back from being this person that I want to be? And I think that's probably my main driver in growth, or like when I surround myself with people and there's something about them I admire, it's a thought process of like, is this a skill that I haven't developed, or is this something really unique about this person that I should celebrate and understand that like that is not a strength that I will ever have?
Interesting. So when you say
Well,
like something doesn't feel congruent in your life or something seems like out
yeah.
of like what does that look like or feel like to you?
So, I think there's probably like like I know I talk about this all the time, but like the transition to being like a stay-at-home mom who's working, right? I was so out of whack and out of balance. And my gosh, there's like a million things that you can grow on while going through that phase in your life. But when I look at the objective things of like, I have a son that I adore and I get to spend time with him. I have a husband who I also adore. And I have like roles in work that I love and that are growing, and I have friends. So like you look at the objective hard facts and they are good, but I still feel myself like not happy or focusing more on negative than I
Mhm.
usually would, or my spirit is tired. Then that tells me like either something needs to change about my environment, or there's something like in me that needs to change, whether that means it changes me and takes me to a new role, or it changes my mindset, or it changes who I am as a person, what I focus on, or like that change will open up new doors, whatever it is. But like if the hard facts of life are good and I'm not happy, then that's a me problem. And if the hard facts of life aren't good, that's also a me problem. And there's some like that's an easy one, right? Like, oh, I'm not happy with my job. I need to find a new one. How do I need to like grow into the person? That's an easy answer. But like if the hard facts are good and I'm not happy, that's time for like a me conversation with myself.
Interesting. So, Biz, Katie kind of gave me that example I was about to ask each of you for is an example of seeing something in
Sorry.
your life that you no, it's perfect. It's perfect transition. When you see something in your life that you're like, I can sense that I need to grow through this, especially if it's something that you feel like you accomplished. Like if there's something that you're like, I did grow through this, I would love to hear an example of like something that you saw in your life and you're like, this is where I'm lacking and I need to get better or grow or develop this skill.
Yeah. I'm actually trying to think of like a less vulnerable example because and it's
I
crazy.
have another one if you like want to ponder for a second.
Ooh.
Um, no, I'm good. I think I am gonna lean into the vulnerability spot of it
Let's
because
go.
like my problem was that I was so unhappy with everything that was around that I really was racing to check the box to get off the roller coaster.
Mm.
Mm.
And it was like, okay, what do I need to do to decide that like I don't want to do this anymore? And there's no way out. And I couldn't see out from any of it. And it was months of like people be like, do things that make you happy. And I'm like, what the fuck makes me happy? Like, like it really and so it kind of got to like an honest to God, like true place of desperation of like either I was gonna have to figure something out or I wasn't. And that it's like honestly that it's like kind of like labor. Like when you get to that point where it's like just you and your body and there's nobody
Yeah.
else and there's no turning point. And I had that like reckoning with myself to grow through it and decide. And it's I mean it gets easier, but like those first few steps are fucking hard as fuck. I mean there's no other way of saying it. And so like to sit there and say like an example, I think that my life as a whole, and that I am, on the other side, in the sense that like there's hope in every day that was non-existent.
I like
And yeah, so I mean, so yeah, like on a whatever. And I can give micro examples, but those are honestly more like goal, like necessity driven,
Ooh,
like scarcity
okay.
mindset almost driven into like needing to do things and overcoming versus like choosing to grow into that spot
That's a
for me.
really interesting distinction.
That
Yeah.
is. You said something else that really jumped out at me, Biz, is that a lot of times there's not a turning point and you're like sitting there on your own fighting this battle. And I think that's so true that like it's easy for us to look back at growth and identify what it was. But when you're in the thick of it, it's not like you walk up to a fork in the road and there's a sign that's like growth right, stagnant left. Like sometimes there are, right? Like if you're scared to go for a new opportunity or whatever, um, that might be part of it. But a lot of times, the things that lead us to growth, like substantial growth, it's not like we sit there in the beginning and choose it. We all of a sudden fall into somewhere where we're like, okay, well, nothing's going to change if I don't change. And then you're already in the midst of it. Like you've already started. So that was a really interesting point.
Well, and that's like again why I love what we do and like coming back and pulling from it. That whatever that episode we have, it's like Ashleigh and the Birds, or no, it was Biz the Birds, Biz
Biz
and the
and
Birds. But it was the one where Ashleigh talked about birds and blood pressure, man. Like I am so freaking tuned in to making sure I listen to birds chirp. Like, but it's like teeny tiny micro decisions like that. Teeny tiny micro decisions. So anyway, yeah, I mean, but Katie, did you have another example of a small,
Yeah, it
not
was
so
just
vulnerable?
funny. Like while we were talking about it, I thought about like probably one of the first times that I realized it in my life, other than like, oh, I'm not where I want to be. And like at this point in my life, it was high school. So it would have been like athletics, like, oh, I can't do this. I want to do this. So I have to grow, whatever. I grew up very like, you talk about justice and mercy, right? Like there's two things. I grew up very justice minded, and so were my parents. And so like I wanted justice. I thought that that's how the world worked. And like, I would pride myself on being able to like prove to somebody that they were wrong. And I remember it was actually somebody that I dated talked about like, you should value mercy. And I said, no. I was like, people are wrong. They should know they're wrong. I was like, if you hurt me, I'm going to make you feel just like I'm going to explain in 27 ways how you hurt me and make you feel just as bad because you should know that you're wrong. And it wasn't him saying it that triggered the actual change, but it was the first time that somebody like challenged me on that. And so then, like, for a couple years, I kind of stewed on that. And then finally was like, okay, what does a merciful person look like? And it was tough because being a justice minded person was like such a big part of my identity. And so it was just really interesting to like sit there. And that one was one where like I sat and looked at the options and was like, I am going to choose to understand more about this because I think it'll make me a better human. And learn the balance.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Also, Ashleigh, you just called me out on that slip about me and about what I need to do and if I want to. Like, yeah, that's exactly what I'm working through. The fact that like it's a choice that I make that I don't need to do shit. But like, I mean, it's terrible. It's like who am I holding like who is this person? It's me. I mean, it's me that I hold myself to these standards to and what I have to do. Yeah, that is wild that you called me out on that. I do appreciate it. And I'm already chewing on it. Already chewing on it.
That are targeting in. That's crazy, Katie. I don't think anybody's ever challenged. I am also very justice minded. I'm like, I know that there's the old saying, there's three sides to every story. There's your side, their side, and then the truth. And I'm always like, okay, there's two sides to the story. There's their side of the story, and then there's my side of the story, because my side of the story is the truth and filled with objective
Right.
facts.
Right. Yes, exactly. Yeah. And
if
I
you've
mean,
ever heard me vent about anything, I'm like, okay, now granted, I XYZ blah blah blah, and that probably
right.
wasn't the best, but and so I am very like, I am right, and that idea of like mercy, like, ooh, that's quite
Like,
the key.
embracing it and, like, man, it's tough. Now, I mean, clearly, if somebody fucks up a crumble order, like, still justice-minded, no mercy there, like, Imma call that person and get a refund. But yeah, it was interesting, and I guess it's still, like, a natural tendency sometimes, but
Yeah.
think about that, it's tough.
Yeah, that is tough. It is hard. I think for me, some of the most growth I've had to do was around gratitude. And I remember it being
Oh,
introduced to me via an expansion network I was working with in real estate. And they had a thing where every morning on like this big giant group chat, whatever, you had to send in your 3 gratitudes. And I thought it was the stupidest thing. I was like, okay, I'll check the box off. I'll do it because I am a team player. If nothing else, I'll send in my own. I'm grateful for coffee and I'm grateful for my bed. And like, I did not feel it in the slightest. And I didn't even like identify it as like, I need to grow through this or want to grow through this
yeah,
until I started to notice that even though I was checking boxes of things like fulfilling career goals and family goals and, bucket list vacations or whatever, like I just was always so focused on the next checkbox and never
yeah,
satisfied. And that was my
mm,
like waking up moment of I really need to make myself grow through actually accepting the practice of gratitude and making it impactful and meaningful. And that's not easy to do because it's just I don't know, times it's easy to just be like, like I said, grateful for coffee and like, yeah, I am, but like, you're just kind of like flippant about it. And really like
yeah.
yesterday I had some not great news land in my email and it's like, well, at the end of the day, I've got 2 healthy kids and a husband that I really love, and
Yeah.
that's what's
You
important.
know,
And
it's fascinating to hear you say that, Ashley. I was really glad that like you were the one that brought up this topic because it's something you said back in our very beginning episodes about how when it's something that's just uncomfortable, you see that as a sign to run towards it because you're like a growth junkie. And
Yeah.
so, like, and I'll never forget that, like, you explaining that, and it impacted me. And like, ever since then, now I'm like, okay, wow, like, I'm really uncomfortable about this. Like,
yeah,
why am I uncomfortable?
a little bit
Um,
uncomfortable.
and with that, and so it's cool to see you bring it up with another example.
Yeah.
So in a smaller kind of real life one, but also to remind you that you do this all day, every day. It's like your DNA.
Yeah.
So, and like, don't have any doubt at all in your ability. So,
Well, thanks.
yeah.
What's interesting to me is that when I first took a class that really challenged my limits of thinking and ideas around who one person can actually be, I found that it became really uncomfortable because I was super comfortable with the growth. I loved the growth. I loved experiencing
Yeah.
it. I loved seeing who I was becoming and the potential and that like busy reference, like having hope for every single day. And I was like, holy mackerel, this is so cool. What was weird to me is that sometimes you're surrounded by people that don't like it. They don't like
Yep.
seeing the growth. It makes them uncomfortable, or maybe you're kind of touching on something that's sensitive to them and their own experiences or whatever. Um, I don't know if you guys have had some of those same experiences. I would think that you have, but do you have a way
Mhm.
that you separate helpful criticism? So when somebody says, like, you're just really hyper focused, or Biz, you're too much, or blah, 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 blah. Do you have a way that you separate somebody that is actually giving you a helpful criticism versus somebody that's just peanut gallery? They don't like your growth.
Yeah. This to me is all about the approach. Hold on.
Ooh.
I totally have this. One, it is if it is criticism or critique that I have asked for, then it is a completely different conversation. And I am very intentional about the specific thing that I am going to you for. And I make those decisions for myself. And a lot of it has to do with value plus time, like over time, right? And you can't speed that up. So PSA, it is, unless I come to you specifically asking, then I need you to ask permission before you give me anything. Because to me, if you feel so audacious to step in and give me any form of critique without first checking that I am in a space to receive it, then that is an alpha move. And I will alpha you to the ground on why you are credentialed to speak to me on that specific critique. And I'm going to come from a place of curiosity and understanding why you're telling me what you are. And then I will decide if I want to listen to you.
Interesting.
So and I do that in real time. And I do that ever since that conversation I had. And that's how I decided that I'm going to show up differently the next time that happens. And I haven't had where somebody's told me that I'm too much again, but I have had moments where people have like barged in and I have to check them a little bit.
I love that. I think that's a great, because like you said, that am I in the space to receive criticism? That's huge.
Yeah.
And that comes from one of my mentors, Diane Griffin. But it's like reverse accountability, that like if I have critique to give, then I tell someone within 24 hours of me identifying that critique. And then they have 48 hours from that date to set an appointment on their calendar to talk to me. And that is like releasing my energy and brain space of it too. So that way, if they don't want to meet with me or whatever, then like, then why am I wasting energy on the critique to give in the first place?
Yeah.
So that's my formula around it. And so it was like reverse. So it's like a reverse boundaries where you teach people how you want to be treated.
Yeah.
So that's how
That's awesome. What about you, Katie?
So, okay. I like, man, remember a couple weeks ago when I said, nobody can surprise me with the negative things they say about me because I'm just going to beat them to it. I've already thought it.
Yes.
So like, for me, again, it's like, I stay crystal clear on my mission, my priorities, and my growth. And like, my board of directors is welcome to have conversations with me because they know me, my intentions, and behind the scenes things. They also will deliver things constructively. Anybody who's like a peanut gallery just talking shit or like has a critique, like, that's fine. You can say it. I've probably already thought it. I'm always interested in growing myself and like becoming better. But I don't really value or let like random comments hold weight for me. I've already thought the negative thing. And I think for me, the changing point in this, there were a couple, but one of them, again, the justice versus mercy. I let go of the need for everybody to hear my side of every story. And so people can pop off and say whatever they want. I don't need to come back with a like defense to it. And I, always want to stay in that place of growth and also know there are a lot of places I come short. Whatever they're talking about has probably just moved down on the priority list due to something else. And so like, my inner circle is welcome to talk to me about things, and I value, cherish, and appreciate those conversations. And everybody else is kind of noise when they, especially the ones who like pretend they're being constructive, but it's really just like, it's,
that's what the worst of it is. And like, I experienced that in my career, right? Like early, I've been doing it 10 years now, but like, I would say like the first 5, especially, like I was so naive, and I would like run up to any woman lender and I'd be like, oh my God, you were so cool. And I mean, I got like stomped on and stabbed in the back a few times by people. And it was a hard lesson. It was really, it was tough to get from women. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah. But it hasn't happened in a while. And it's part of the reason, it's really the main reason I'm so hell bent and, you know, like whatever they do, like, what are your values? No, what are the things that piss you off? Like that's like, that's where I know I can go to that list. And then it's like, oh, these are my values. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah. Interesting. I wish when we had Diana Kokoska on as a guest, we could have asked her if she could estimate how many marriages her class that she wrote ended.
Well, there's one right here.
Because
my first one.
It's probably one of my favorite parts of taking a bold course, and maybe it's not quite as bad as it used to be. The course has changed a little from when back in the heydays of how intense it used to be.
Yeah.
And I remember it being every single week somebody standing up and be like, I told my husband I'm getting a divorce and I'm bold. And he's like, oh my God.
Like, yes, you are.
But it was because, and it sounds like, I'm sure people have no idea. They listen in on this and they're like, that's insane. But it's
why are you taking that class?
You go through these weeks and you're growing and you're excited and you're trying to do something to better not only yourself, but to better provide for your family. And then you're met with so much resistance from the person who's supposed to be your partner. So much so that they introduced a part of this class where you're supposed to bring a paper home to your spouse and be like, this is the commitment I'm making to my business.
Yeah.
And like, I need you on board. And they had to sign it.
Yeah.
Wild. So yeah, I wish we'd asked that, because it is weird that it's not something you expect when you start growing. And it is like shattering, because you're so excited for the healing that this is going to be and how much better things are going to be for you. And then you're met with that resistance. It is devastating. But what I am curious about is, do you think somebody's ever right that that's too much growth, or that growth is unnecessary?
Okay, so I have a lot of thoughts in this. So yes and no. And I battle with this internally, because I always want to continue growing, and I always like, whoever I turn into will have new things to work on, right? Like, I'm never a finished project. And I think that if we if we fixate on that too much, then we never pause to celebrate and enjoy like who we are, or not just who we are, but this growth will change your circle. It'll change your life. It'll impact the people around you. And if we are continually like, oh, it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough, I'm still shit, then like you're also shitting on everybody around you. And so I think that it's really important to like take those pauses and enjoy. And I know, I like, for instance, because Ashleigh, I know the video you're talking about, where she says like, do you ever just pause and enjoy? And so like when I was getting divorced, right? So like, hello, hi, yes, I lost a marriage to bold. I'm just kidding, but that was kind of like a wake up. There was like a lot of growth, and I knew it. I knew I was in the middle of it, and like it started, I got divorced, and then like while there were other things that were growing in my life, I also was like, okay, I kind of felt it, right? Like, you turn a corner and you're no longer actively battling, and you're kind of like getting into maybe a new routine. You don't feel in survival mode as much, or you're not having to force yourself into new habits, or one day there's a small change in the way that you think. And I kind of felt some of those things. And I remember the freedom that it brought me, that I could exhale and enjoy that I had worked really, really hard to create this beautiful circle of people around me and set new goals. And that like, man, was I at the infancy of growth, and I could just pause and enjoy like, okay, I've reset my circle, I've reset my work goals, I've reset my environment. And now I get to enjoy the benefits of being around those things, and they'll shape me into another person. But like right now, I just need to like, I think you lose sight of what's around you when you're always looking forward.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I just need to pause and like embrace this moment in my life. And yeah, I just have to lay the battle sword down for like a minute.
I don't think there's such thing as too much growth, but there's definitely too little growth, like too little growth.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I think it's impossible to say there is too much. Just to answer your question, Ashleigh, I think that's what you were saying.
Do you think that there's something like, do you think there's something to, like, I know recently of a situation, somebody that we know parted ways with a longtime business partner and ended up saying like, well, I'll never be satisfied. And it bled over into like their relationships and their work relationships and their stress level in life, because they're always looking for the next peak. And so that never satisfied, it might have fueled them and they've had a lot of growth, but also like, what is it doing to your life?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting idea, thinking of, is there such a thing as too much growth? Because we've talked about, and Biz touched on it, that I love growth. And
yeah,
I saw something else where this girl was talking about, hey, you know, do you ever get into a new job and you're in the chaos of it, and then you finally start getting settled, you've been there a few months, you're not the new person anymore, you're getting in the groove of things, you know how everything works, and you just have the urge to quit and start something new?
Yeah.
Somebody was like, girl, that's a trauma response to being raised in chaos.
Oh shit.
It's like, oh, man, just one moment of peace.
Yeah.
Because it's
no, I totally feel that. And though, like what Katie's talking about, like pausing when you're in those moments to like recognize the transition, and I do think it's healthy to recognize, and like that's kind of like where some of the biggest advice I got, right? Like, Biz just wants it all, she wants to have it all, and it's like, yeah, I do, you're right.
Yeah.
And they're like, nobody's telling you to not want it all, we just want to see you take the pressure off, is the advice that was given to me. And I'm really, chewing through that, and the bit with the whole growth thing, like there is no such thing as too much growth. I mean, there's unhealthy ways of like burning relationships as you go.
Yeah.
And what I mean with that, but also like being present. And I used to say that like rising water raises all ships. And so like I would find a new harbor and like be really grateful to be brought up. And I think now I am intentional in recognizing when I am transitioning to a new harbor. And that makes it easier to pause and reflect. And then I give gratitude to my harbor mates, my new harbor mates. So it's kind of like a Marie Kondo, like, thank you for all you've done for me, release. And then it's like, wow, thank you so much. And then like coming always, it just keeps me present.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to find this quote that I posted somewhat recently, and it came to mind, but I know I'm gonna like mess it up. Okay, here we go. Small and consistent steps taken regularly over time lead to big gains. Pick your goals accordingly. You spend a minute on top of the mountain, but hundreds of hours on its sides.
Ooh.
And so I like this because it's a reminder of like, it's a lot of work, and also like take your minute on top of the mountain. Like, yes, keep growing and you should chase growth, and also like pause. Like, it's okay to look around and be present in the moment and like acknowledge and be grateful for where you're at, and like sometimes you have to exhale.
Yeah.
I literally made the joke in my mortgage moms group, because those I made a post. I was like, those of us who are still fortunate enough to be being blown up by recruiters right now, I highly recommend taking one of the phone calls, if for nothing else, to have someone else tell you how good you're doing. I didn't even know I needed that, but man, did I need to know that somebody wanted me that bad. minds, right? Like you just gotta like sometimes you completely miss stuff and God bless recruiter. But I'm just saying when somebody third party completely recognizes and you could have this anyway.
Yeah. It's interesting. I like that. I really like that quote because it's that idea too of it's not just about the destination, it's about the journey. Being that I'm the same mindset as you, Katie, where I'm not going to arrive to a final destination of being a perfect human. And so I will just kind of always be learning and growing. And so if I'm constantly so focused on an outcome that I want, I will never enjoy the journey that I'm on. And that was a lot of my gratitude practice and growth.
Ooh, I will never enjoy the journey I'm on. Did you just say that?
I did.
Take it back.
And no.
Enjoy it every day. That's the whole point, right?
It's the whole
Is
point.
that like when you're growing and you're journeying that you're joying at the same time?
Yeah. Because it's not always comfortable, and you do end up having to say goodbye to certain relationships or friendships or colleagues that are inhibiting or don't want to be along for the next part of the journey. And so when you're stuck in the this is so uncomfortable phase, you're just not enjoying any of it, and it's crazy.
Okay, touche.
Because you spend.
Sorry, I was getting like meta level. Sorry.
I think you missed the first part of her statement where she was saying like it's important to stay present or you won't enjoy every day of the journey.
Oh,
yeah, that you should.
Oh my god. Oh my god, that's so embarrassing. I'm sorry.
I'm not endorsing.
I was like, I'm just gonna keep going. I'm sorry.
Oh, Biz.
I'm crying.
Okay, I don't know if you guys read.
Funny. Yes, actually, I agree with you. I take back everything I just said.
I don't know if you guys read this. I did send this question ahead of time because I did want to give you time to think about it. But if you didn't, I'm kind of excited for a blind react as well. What's your reaction to the idea that we are unable to experience happiness because we are busy constantly trying to fix ourselves rather than just being who we are?
Oh gosh, happiness is such an illusion. I hate this fucking word. I don't.
That's what I was
happy. Happy is good, but like whatever. People chase after happiness and tie it to outcomes. When this happens, I'll be happy. When this happens, I'll be happy. And yes, sometimes something needs to change for your own personal well-being, and that will lead to more happiness. And also, happiness, joyfulness, whatever, should be like self-generated from a place of I am happy, pleased, impressed with, content, whatever word you want to use, with like where I'm at, where I'm going, who's going with me, the things that I'm doing, blah, 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 blah. You can't chase happy. You can't chase it. You'll never get there.
What about you, Rich?
Anyways, I forgot the question.
No, it was perfect.
That's what I was kind of talking about is like what you're talking about. Like you can't always try to fix something because then you never stop and realize that you're pretty fucking awesome where you are.
Yeah.
And so that's why I hated and I've doubled down so hard right there. So, I mean, yeah. And I was in that hellhole for a very long time. So
yeah. You know what I like to differentiate is the idea of fix versus growth. I don't think something needs to be wrong with you for you to need or want to experience growth. And that to me is a very important differentiating factor when I'm like, oh, the way I respond to this is wrong or bad. And can there be wrong or bad ways to handle things that are toxic and not good for you? Sure. But labeling that internally shames yourself. And we talked about shame a few episodes ago and how it can be such a toxic motivator. So it's one of those really small tweaks that if you're constantly thinking, I have to fix this about myself, you may find yourself in a trap.
Okay. And that's like such a great point because yes, it's exactly that like growth. And maybe this is what I mean when I say stop and pause and like the example that I gave, because growth when you're growing and you're on the right track, should be something to be celebrated, and it will always continue as long as you're like in the right place. Growth coming from a place of self-deprecation is like not okay. And that's when you like fixate on, I'm so bad at this, or I hate this about myself, or I need to change this about myself. Again, to your point, it's okay to recognize those things. Like we all have things that we need to change. And that mentality will shoot you down further and your growth will plummet, because all you're doing is hyperfixating on the negative instead of, these are my goals, this is where I'm going, and you grow through that and become a better person.
Totally.
Yeah, that, thanks. You summed that up very well.
Thanks. I have one last question for you guys. And this came up when I was talking social media with somebody, and they were saying, well, you have to really safeguard your mentality, because when we post on social media and we get likes or comments or a lot of views, it hits dopamine. And so we associate the positive criticisms of social media with our own self-worthiness and self-value. So when we get negative criticisms on social media, or quote unquote hate comments, we allow those to affect us because we're allowing the positive criticism in as well. So it was this idea of, that shouldn't matter. That positive response should not be so positive, in a sense. And it's kind of weird and almost sounds like negative at first to say it like that. I don't know. Maybe I'm not explaining it right.
No, it like shouldn't hold weight, because if one matters, the other matters.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My answer to that is, that's exactly how I think about it. And so my response is, I don't take compliments from people that I don't take criticism from.
That is,
because I give them the same weight. It literally is the same weight. And so, and it's a me thing.
Yeah.
Like, I just can't receive your compliment. I can say thank you and be polite, just like I can say thank you and be polite to a polite critique, but it's not taking up any space.
Interesting.
Whatsoever.
That's exactly what I was wondering, is if you know there's somebody that you do not accept negative critiques from for whatever reason, if they then say, hey Biz, I've noticed that you're just working really hard and you're doing so great and I'm really proud of you, does that take up does it have any weight if you don't give weight to their negative criticisms?
Nope. Because my response to that was, if somebody were to tell me that, I'd be like, I would compliment my processor, my assistant. I'd be like, great, she's doing a great job. Like, that's what that would mean to me, is that the facade that shit is good is good. Because what I've learned is that successful businesses, like, everything looks great from 30,000 feet.
Yeah.
Everything does. And so that is just such a surface level compliment. Like, it just has to have like meat to it in order for me to believe it.
Yeah.
And I do. And I already know my business is great from 30,000 feet. So, and like, you're not going to be in a space where you understand anything that I'm actually struggling with for me to believe that what you're telling me has merit. And that's where it's tough. That's where it's tough. And I realize as that comes out of my mouth, literally Katie's head popped up. What, like, Katie, that conversation we had about, trusting your friends not to lie to you, but like, that's a big difference there. And like a friend defining category for me.
Yeah.
This one's really tough for me, because logically I know how I feel or how I think.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I am a words of affirmation person.
Yep.
And so for me to receive a compliment, it is very difficult to not buy into it. Now, I will say, if somebody is so off the charts that like, I don't like you or I don't respect you or whatever, I get like physically uncomfortable when I get compliments from people like that, because I like don't even want to hear it. I don't want your words to come near me at all. And they should hold the same weight. It is very like, I have to actively choose to not let it impact me, because I am such a words of affirmation person. And the way that I counterbalance that is like, Brett and I have a lot of communication about checking in on how I am, because I really want, like, my cup needs to be filled with my love language by my inner circle, so that anything that anybody else says is kind and appreciated, but won't like, I mean, yeah, it might make me smile or whatever, but like, I shouldn't be dependent on that validation. And that way I'm also not devastated by their critique.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, so there's like a negative consequence of you receiving too many compliments when you're a words of affirmation person. That's fascinating. Like the way that you're
No.
describing this. Well, but
It's
from
it's
the
only it's only negative because, like, I logically know that somebody who is not in that group that I would take critiques from, their words shouldn't I can receive them and appreciate them, but they can't sway me or give me confidence or, like, they can't
I
have an
see.
impact. Yeah.
But you feel like
There's
Interesting.
nothing negative.
That's cool that you know that about yourself.
that's what I was most curious about, is that you're
Smart.
so strong in the words of affirmations that when I was writing that question, I was like,
Yeah.
I need to do what Katie says, because that has got to be a challenge. And like you said,
Oh my
you got to keep your cup full to keep yourself safeguarded.
Y'all, it's so hard. There's some woman, I don't even know her. I posted our wedding video on Facebook when we got married. So I have no clue who this woman is. And she said something about me being brave for walking down the aisle alone. And like, I didn't think it was brave because it was a walk, but I did have a lot of symbolism in why I walked alone. And this woman's compliment, like, made me I thought about it, like, 5 times a day for a week. I don't know this woman. She has no right to be in my brain that much. But, like, and every time I thought about it, I had to, like, poor Brett, because I was probably like, "Hey, I need to replace this thought with, like, a conversation with you." Because, like, I can't get hung up on the opinions of strangers.
Yeah, it's super true. I mean, when you open yourself up to say, I'm going to grab so much validation and internalize the
Yep.
good thing that this person said, which at first seems so innocuous and unharmful. But then when you realize that flip side means that you will have to grab
Yep.
onto and allow the negative in at you, not that you have to, but that you will. Your brain is just going to. It's going to say, hey, this
Yeah.
is a person we trust. And so now their negative opinions hold just as much weight. So it's an
Yeah.
interesting idea. Well, thank you
Yeah,
guys.
this is a good, like, brain tickler.
I know. Like, I feel like my brain like moving, like it's thinking on.
Yeah, there's a lot happening right now.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed this conversation. It's an interesting one.
Me
I
too.
think it's a good thing to reflect on. And if you're somebody that is in a season of growth and you're struggling with that, you're not alone, because we're your friends.
All of us. Yeah, everyone.
So
Yeah.
don't forget to go leave us a 5-star review, please. It makes us easier for people to find us and become our friends, because we are on a mission to be friends with everybody in the world. And we would love it if you shared us with one of your friends that you think would enjoy this episode. Don't forget, you can join our group on Facebook. We're your friends now, and join the conversation daily, not just weekly. So thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next week.
Boop, doop, 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 boop, boop, boop.